What's up and welcome back to the Gridiron with Chance Aspen. Make sure you like this video and subscribe down below. Now, enjoy this video. Alright, welcome back to another division deep dive. This one is on the AFC North. We're wrapping up the AFC. If you don't know by now, how it works with my division deep dives is I tell you everything I like about each team, everything I don't like, and then I give my prediction on what I think their record is going to be this season. So let's start with the defending AFC North champs, the Baltimore Ravens. Let's start with everything I like about this team. Their overall offensive talent. If you look at their overall offensive talent over the last couple of years, it's really improved year after year after year. Guys like Zay Flowers, obviously a rookie last year, I would expect him to take a step this year and really flourish into that number one receiver role for the Ravens. Also, the addition of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is still one of the best running backs in the NFL. I know he's not maybe as explosive as some of these other guys or can burst runs, and he needs a lot of carries to get momentum, and he needs probably 25 carries for it to feel effective. But he's still a really good football player. And then, obviously, maybe the biggest weapon in the NFL in Lamar Jackson. Even though he's your quarterback, he is a weapon. He can do things on the football field that very few people in the world can do. Another guy, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Nobody talks about him, but he is legit an elite tight end in the NFL. But you got those four kind of offensive pieces that I think the Ravens can build around, build a system around, and I would suspect their offense to be near the top of the league this year. Another thing I like is they have 3 or 4 defensive difference makers, which is what you need. I believe you need a couple offensive difference makers, a couple defensive difference makers, and Baltimore has that. On defense, Justin Madubuike, he turned into a star last year. Now he got the new contract. I really believe he is one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. He might not get the credit some of the other top defensive tackles get, but he is an elite defensive tackle in the NFL. Another guy, Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is probably, Fred Warner's great, but I love Roquan Smith. His coverage skills, his sideline to sideline just ferociousness, his aggressiveness, how hard he plays snap to snap. Another guy, Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton blossomed last year. He became one of the best safeties in the NFL. One of the best playmaking safeties in the NFL. And then Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey's more like a question mark on is he still a difference maker? But when he was right, now he really wasn't healthy last year, but when he was right and healthy, he's still one of the best corners in the NFL. Let's move along. Another thing I like about the Baltimore Ravens, and you know this when a Harbaugh is coaching, how physical they play game to game. If the Baltimore Ravens get a lead on you, it's a good chance they're probably going to win that football game. They're going to be very, very difficult to beat if they get a lead and an advantage on you, and they can start running the ball and handing the ball off and leaning on you and using their physicality to take over a football game. It will be very, very hard to beat them. And that's what you get with a John Harbaugh team or a Jim Harbaugh. They play physical. They play a certain brand of style that's effective and that wins a lot of games. The last thing I like, I know I talked about him already, Lamar Jackson. He is a weapon. He is so unique. They have to use it more. I know there's a lot of questions. Can he get it done deep in the playoffs? I just think he can. He's that good, especially with his ability to escape, scramble, avoid rushers, extend plays. It's just so unique how he plays. He is a one of one in our league. All right, now let's move on to some of the things that I don't like about the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of questions at the O-line position. Outside of Tyler Linderbaum, there's a lot of questions. I know they still have Ronnie Stanley, but he's been hurt. He has not been able to stay on the field consistently for the Ravens. there's a lot of question marks. A couple have left in free agency. They've traded one or two. They have a lot of question marks. Now, I'm going to give the Ravens the benefit of the doubt and say they're going to figure this out with the O-line because they've been that good at drafting young O-linemen, developing them, being able to play backups that people don't heard of, and then they play excellent when they get in the game. So I expect them to be okay, but it is something that I'm suspect about a little bit. Another thing I don't like, even though I like Derrick Henry, I still question the fit. They like to run out of the pistol so they can use Lamar's feet as a threat. But instead of Henry's better of quarterback under center, handing the ball off, getting him a head start downhill, letting his legs be able to gain momentum. That's how Henry plays. That's how he's been successful on Tennessee. And the Ravens don't really do that. So I just question his fit with the Baltimore Ravens. Last thing, there's still questions about Lamar Jackson's health. I know he was healthy all last year, so everybody kind of moves on. But that's still something that I worry about and don't like, that he still has questions about his health. Now, if he gets through this year, then those questions will go away. But it's still something that I'm still like, I don't know. Can he still stay healthy for a full season? It's a grind. It's a long season. Can he stay healthy? I suspect him to. And I have the Baltimore Ravens finishing this season at 11-6. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's start off with the things I like about the Bengals. Love their whole offense. Their whole offense, if they're healthy, now that's a big question because they haven't been healthy, but if they are healthy, they're an elite offense. With Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, I like Chase Brown. He brings a new element to the backfield. Zach Moss does too. Obviously losing Joe Mixon or trading him away. I love their whole offense. And I think their offense is going to be probably a top 5 offense. Especially if Burrow's healthy for the full season. And especially if he's healthy, he has been throughout training camp. But if he's healthy going into week 1, I expect them to hit the ground running this year, what they couldn't do last year. Another thing I like is I just talked about him. You have an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. I believe when Joe Burrow's healthy, he is a top 2, top 3 quarterback in the NFL. His ability to process information, pick defenses apart, his ball placement, his pocket movement, his fundamentals. He's a natural thrower. Everything about him is textbook when it comes to the quarterback position. Another thing I like, they have 2 number 1 receivers. Very few teams in the NFL have legit 2 number 1 receivers. They might say, we got 2 number 1s, but very few teams legit have 2 number 1s. Where if the one guy's out, the other one can step up and it looks like they still have another number 1 on the field. And that's what the Bengals have. They have T. Higgins and obviously Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase is a top 3 receiver in the NFL. I really do. I love Jamar Chase. Moving on. Another thing I like, Trey Hendrickson. For all the edge rushers that we talk about this edge rusher, and we're going to talk about a couple of them coming up here on the next couple teams that we talk about. Trey Hendrickson never gets mentioned. Why? He is an elite pass rusher. He gets sacks at an elite level, but nobody talks about him. Why? I just wanted to mention, he is so underrated when it comes to defensive ends in the NFL. So underrated. The last thing I like, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson, they're underrated and nobody really talks about them, but they are legit one of the best linebacking duos in the NFL. That's not me just speaking. They are legit. They're super underrated and they don't get talked about a lot. But as a duo, they're one of the best in the NFL. No doubt about it. All right, now let's move on to the things I don't like about the Cincinnati Bengals. Their quarterback has only finished 2 seasons of his 4 years in the NFL. The other 2 have been season-ending injuries. Joe Burrow has to stay healthy for this team to be effective. If he is not healthy, this team does not stand a chance. They don't. They don't stand a chance if he is not healthy and on the field for them. Another thing I don't like, they have questions in the secondary. Last year, even though Burrow wasn't healthy, I don't know how good of a team they would have been because their secondary just got beat for big play after big play after big play after big play. They have to tighten that up this year. Their offense is going to be good if they're all healthy. But if they really want to go where they want to go, their defense has to step up, especially their secondary, to where they were a couple of years ago, if they really want to do what they want to do. The last thing I don't like or have questions about, can the O-line protect Joe Burrow at a better rate than what they have in the past couple of years? Since this guy's coming in the NFL, he's taken hit after hit after hit. Now, some of that is his own fault, but can they protect him and allow him to get the ball to these playmakers down the field? That's a big question mark for me this year for the Bengals. Can they protect at a better rate than what they have in the past? If they do that, they're going to be very good. And I think they'll do that. But it's a question mark. And I have them at 12-5 this year. I have the Bengals at 12-5. Let's move along to the next team in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns. Here's some of the things I like about the Browns. An elite offensive line. One of the best offensive lines in the NFL. An O-line that when they get a lead, they're like the Baltimore Ravens. When they get a lead, they can grind you out. They can grind out a game with the running game because their O-line is so elite. Their O-line is elite. It's one of the best in the NFL, and when they get a lead on you, they're very hard to come back on because they can just grind out the game with the running game. Another thing I like is their stacked defense. Their defense is one of the best in the NFL. It is. It is an elite defense. Now, they struggled on the road, and I think that was more flukish, luckish, kind of just a weird stat. But their defense, if you just go look at their roster and their defense, it is stacked with talent. And speaking of that defense, they have one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I just talked about Hendrickson being underrated. This guy's not underrated. Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett is a beast. He is a beast, and he's really what makes that defense go. Another thing, talking about the stacked defense, the secondary is elite. With Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Grant Delpit in the safety position, this secondary is elite. And they can play man-to-man coverage with some of the best receiving cores in the NFL. I mean, their secondary is on another level than most teams. Another thing I like is they have an elite coach. Kevin Stefanski is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He is so good. Obviously, they lost Deshaun Watson with injury last year. They brought in Joe Flacco. Now, he eventually showed why he struggled to get on a roster. But he had Joe Flacco looking like the MVP of the league for a couple weeks. Kevin Stefanski is an elite coach. Don't get that twisted. And then another thing I like, and people don't talk about this enough in my opinion, it's one of the best rosters in the NFL. Their roster is legit stacked with talent. It is loaded with talent. I only have a couple of things I don't like about the Browns. But the biggest thing is questions at quarterback with Deshaun Watson. Is Deshaun Watson going to show that his seasons in Houston weren't a fluke? Is he going to show that he can still become that guy in Cleveland? They gave him a ton of money. They traded a lot for him. Can he finally step up and show the Cleveland Browns organization that guy is still in there? Can he still make plays like he did in Houston? Can he still be the guy he was in Houston? Or can he be even better than what he was in Houston? He had a game or two last year where it's like, oh, there it is. But can he do it consistently game after game after game after game? That's what I want to see from Deshaun Watson. Because I just talked about it. This roster is stacked. But their biggest question mark, and what I don't like, is Deshaun Watson. Is he going to show that those seasons in Houston weren't a fluke? Can he finally get back to that type of player where he is one of the best 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL? Where he can go toe-to-toe with this guy and that guy if he has to. It's still a big question mark for the Browns. I don't even think the Browns know if they're going to get that guy again. And then I talked about it. Another thing I don't like, but I do believe it is a little fluky, is how bad their defense was on the road. It was weird. Like, their defense was clearing away the best in the NFL at home, but then it looked like garbage on the road. It was just a little weird. And my prediction on what I think the Browns' record is going to be, I have them at 9-8. Let's move on to the last team in the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The first thing I like is Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin gets more out of his players than I think anybody in the NFL. He gets so much out of so little, it's insane. Mike Tomlin is so good. Now, I know they haven't really won playoff games, but they've gotten there, and he's finished every year with a winning record. That is something that needs to be discussed. I know it might be 9-8, but that is hard to do year after year after year after year, especially with how little offensive talent he's had recently. His defense will always be good, but his offense has been horrible recently. Now, some of that's his own fault, don't get me wrong, but it's still really impressive how he still keeps having winning records. Another thing I like is TJ Watt. We just talked about Myles Garrett. TJ Watt, it's him and Myles Garrett as the best pass rushers in the NFL. He is a legit game changer. He changes games with his play. He is so good when he is on the field that he is a legit game changer. Another game changer they have, and they don't have many, I'll be honest. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't have many legit game changers, but I think this next guy, Micah Fitzpatrick, is a game changer. I really only think the Steelers have 2 game changers, and they're TJ Watt and now Micah Fitzpatrick. Micah Fitzpatrick, I would argue, probably put Kyle Hamilton ahead of him, but he's top 3 best safeties in the NFL. Guaranteed. Another thing I like is the Patrick Queen edition this offseason from Baltimore. I thought he was super underrated last year. He didn't get talked about enough. He's a former first-round pick. He is a really good football player. I really am excited to see this addition into this defense. They've obviously struggled at linebacker in the past couple of years. That's really been their one Achilles. One weakness on the defensive side of the ball was the linebacking position. And I think adding Patrick Queen will help stabilize that. Another thing I like with the Steelers is just how hard they play. I think I talked about this with the Raiders with Antonio Pierce. You know what you're going to get when you watch a Pittsburgh Steelers game. It's going to be 16-16 in the fourth quarter, and they're going to find a way to pull it out. That's just how a Pittsburgh Steelers game is going to go. Let's move on to some of the things I don't like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, quarterback. Right now, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson are going back and forth, seeing who's going to start. It appears it's going to be Russell Wilson, but we all saw Russell Wilson is in Denver. He's not the Russell Wilson of Seattle, so they're not getting prime Russell Wilson anymore. And there's just a big question mark there. Another thing I don't like is just the overall lack of offensive skill. I know they have George Pickens. I kind of like Najee Harris, not terribly, but he's okay. But really, George Pickens is their only elite guy on that side of the ball that can really somewhat change games. I wouldn't even really call him a game changer just yet. So I think they lack some elite offensive skill. And then the last thing is just questions at O-line. They've had it for a couple of years. They've drafted a couple guys now. So I think it could be better, but I still believe there's some questions there on the O-line. And what I think their record is going to be this year is 8-9. I don't think he gets the winning record this year. Their schedule is too hard. I think they take a tiny step back this season. But that's my AFC North Division Deep Dive. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, subscribe down below. like this video, and have an awesome day.